Khalsa, Waheguru Ji.
Waheguru Ji ki Fateh. Waheguru Ji Khalsa, Waheguru Ji ki Fateh Ji. Welcome to another session of Coach Gurbani. Ravinder Singh here, joining you from Columbus. I will first read the second Pauri and then offer you a translation that I did of this passage a good 10 years ago. So we'll see how that holds up. So with that said, here we go. The second Pauri of Japji. Hukmi hovan akar, hukum na kaha jai. Hukmi hovan ji, hukum mila vadiyai. Hukmi uttam neech, hukmi likh dukh sukh paiyah. Ikna hukmi baksis, iki hukmi sada pavaiyah. Hukme andar sabko bahir hukm na koe. Nanak hukme je bujah, tahau mein kahe na koe. So pretty short, simple. My translation, done almost a decade ago, reads like this. Through hukam, all forms originate. That hukam no one can state. Through hukam, all life is manifest. By hukam are we richly blessed. Through hukam is rank and order maintained. Through hukam, joy and sorrow ordained. Hukam spells release for some, endless wandering for others it becomes. Writ large in all creation is hukam's rule, immune not even the smallest molecule. Says Nanak, if to hukam we attune, lose forever the sense of haume we assume. So that was my attempt 10 years ago. I think it reads fairly decent, although some of my ideas have changed. And here is a brief overview of hukam that I also wrote a long time ago. I will just share some of that with you to set the context, and then we can have our discussion. So the word hukam, the term hukam, I think a lot of you know this, but it can bear some repetition here. The word is of Arabic origin, signifies order or command. And in the context of Sikhi, it comprises both the meanings of the word. Order as a command, directive or edict, as well as order as systematic organization or the natural order of things, as opposed to random disorder. So hukam in Guru Nanak's thought implies divine order. It's interesting that the idea of hukam is also closely linked to several other concepts, such as Pana, Raza, which is divine pleasure or will, Amar and Farman, which translate to divine fiat, Kudrat, which translates to force or the universe, and Nadar, grace of vision. So there is this linkage to others. The term also shares a basic unity and sometimes an overlapping of meaning with other foundational concepts like Naam, Shabad, and Guru. These terms have been employed in the Guru Granth Sahib in ways that might sometimes make them appear to be indistinguishable. And I've used a quotation, Eko Naam Hukam hai Sadguru Diya Bujai Jiyo. Naam is Hukam, revealed by the true Guru. Nonetheless, in this quote, there is an implied distinction, even though there is some unity. And the distinction is that the Guru is the channel of communication that mediates as Shabad between Naam and the individual self, and it reveals Naam as Hukam. So we see that these concepts express different states of the same one, but point to an underlying primal unity. And so it's against this kind of a backdrop that I think we ought to view hukam. So we noted last week that Guru Nanak emphasizes the importance of hukam when he frames the foundational question of Kiv Satyara Hoye, and his response is Hukam Rajai Chalna. So there is, to me, a symbiotic relationship that seems to be suggested between Haume and Hukam. Hukam Rajai Chalna, and in this passage he's saying, Nanak hukme je bujhe ta haume kahe na koi. So it seems to suggest that there is some kind of a linkage, and I think an important one at that. I personally see Haume as representing our individual conditioned consciousness, which also creates our existential angst, and Hukum signifying a broader ecosystem or cosmic will or awareness. And it is the interplay between Hukum and Haume that ultimately determines the quality of our personal lives. So, but Guru Nanak is also very clear in telling us that Hukum is simply beyond human ken, because no one can know Hukum in its fullness, nor can anyone take stock of its creativity. This is a translation of the Sabad, Tera Hukum na japi ke tara, likh na jane koi. So I suppose the idea is that how do you then understand or live in accord with this hukum, which is the instruction? That is something that I would like to bring up as a discussion point today, because it seems to me that on the one hand, we are supposed to align ourselves with this hukum, and yet on the other hand, it is beyond human comprehension. And of course, there are hints here that it is to the guru that we must turn in order to understand how to live in this mystery. But I think that is a question that I would like to bring to the center of our conversation today. The other concept and the related concept is Haume, which again, I'm sure all of you know, but again, it would bear some repetition, comes from a compound of hum and mama from Sanskrit, denoting the experience of I-ness and my-ness respectively. So it's I and my, but both mean I. So that this is, Haume obviously is the central concept in Sikhi. In other words, it is for Guru Nanak the existential problem of mankind. It is this Haume that we need to somehow, I know we use terms like eradicate and kill and so on and so forth, but again, I want to put this out to you to see how the interplay of Hukam and Haume takes place, and how are we to live our lives invested as we are with Haume, and also pushed to actually live a life in accordance with Hukam. So with that said, I will reach out to you, Ekunkarji, to start the discussion.
Okay. Waheguru Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ki Fateh. I think that's a great question that you're posing. And when I look at this Pauri, the word puja is what pops out at me. And I remember when I was studying Japji Sahib with Dr. Balkar Singh, who, was a professor at Punjabi University. He talked about the word in a really interesting way. And he said that it isn't just to understand like on a surface level, but to understand almost like on a really deep visceral level. And the thing that I find fascinating is that Guru Nanak sort of poses the problem and gives the answer in the first two Pauris of Japji. And yet we then have another, however many 30-some steps of Japji and another 1,422 pages of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, all I think geared towards this experience of understanding, and not understanding intellectually, mentally, conceptually, but understanding emotionally and understanding, like in the limbic system and the most primal parts of our being, that everything that happens is part of Hukum and nothing is outside of Hukum. And so clearly, if there was no way to, if we couldn't get our minds around it at all, there wouldn't be a whole verse on what Hukum is. This verse speaks to me of the non-dualistic essence of life, that, non-dual, when you can just say, I can flow with whatever it is, the pain and the happiness, the blessings and the wandering, I can flow with all of it. And I think that Haume, I love something you said when we talked about all this a long time ago, the I and the mine, like that we are territorial creatures. And so we delineate, this place that's mine. And we're always talking from the place of, not always, but we spend a lot of our life negotiating our territory. And what this understanding of Hukum gives us is, it doesn't give us that the Haume disappears. Like Guru Nanak doesn't say you lose it. It just says it kind of shuts it up, and I think about that, I think about how much of my day I'm reacting and commenting or arguing with reality. Like I was watching the impeachment trials before coming on, and I made a decision that I was not going to just do impeachment trial tonight. I was going to also do Coach Urbani. But it's interesting to see how much it's engaging ego, like how much you're like commenting. And it's really hard to sit back and say, well, this is all part of Hukum, what's unfolding, because there's so much attachment and emotion involved. But that is really the fight, is like, if you're understanding that it's really all in Hukum, you're not going to have much to say about it. If you don't understand that it's Hukum, you're going to have a heck of a lot to say about it. And I think the Guru gives us, basically 250 years of philosophy, 400 years when you include Kabir, right, in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib, all to help us with these last two lines of the second Pauri of Japji. So those are my comments to help start off the discussion.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks. And the interesting thing here is that even Haume, which is our existential problem, has been given to us it comes about by divine ordinance. It is not something that we created, but it signifies the archetypal separation, typal separation from the source, which again has come about through divine ordinance. That makes it very fascinating. And I like your point about when you are seeing things in Haume, then you have a lot to say. And when you are actually seeing this as Hukum, as reality, then you don't have a lot to say, because it is all in Hukum. In other words, you aren't passing judgments. So I think therein lies the crux of the problem, right? Because there is a gap between how we see reality and how reality truly is. So it is this gap because we are trying to impose how we would like to see reality versus how reality actually is. So thank you for that point. And let's hope somebody will pick up on it. Jasbir Singh Virji, I believe you're on.
Okay. I agree with you. The Shabad Hukum, it is the divine order, or the so-called natural law, cosmic law, which governs the entire creation. And the existence of that, the planets are not colliding with each other every day, or the whole system is running in a certain order, and you plant a seed, and with the sunlight and everything, it grows up. That is the natural divine or cosmic law of creation. That's how creation takes place. Now, Haume, once again, as you said from Sanskrit, which is Hamatva, as a being of me, as an individual identity. But then Guru Nanak's way of saying is that, look, even though you have an individual identity, but you are still a part of the whole, you're a part of the source. It's like we're all sparks of the same divine fire. Each spark has some individual identity, yet it is a part of the whole. So, talking about, for example, impeachment and all, this is our interrelationship with the worldly existence. We have to, recognize our individual. My name is Jaspreet Singh, and your name is whatever. It's just a way to address you. But the point is that the source level, we are all one. We are all from the same source. And that Ahmadwa is just understanding that, look, even though you exist individually on this earth, still you are a part of the larger source. The only thing which I have a little difficulty understanding in this Pauri is that hukmi uttam neech, hukmi niktu sukh paye. Ikna hukmi baksi se hukmi sadar bhavaye. That means that ucha nicha. What means ucha nicha? That we are getting pain and suffering in this life because of some hukum. That's something which I have difficulty understanding. And I remember last meeting also we talked about our free will. You mentioned the word free will, that we also have some free will to act and behave in this society, and there are consequences as to our behavior. So that means no matter what we do, still the result will be as per the divine law. That's a little bit of trouble I have understanding. Perhaps you will enlighten me on that.
I'm not sure that I can enlighten anybody, but we'll have hopefully someone will pick up on this. Let me go to Kulwant Kaur Panji. Hopefully, Jaspreet Singh Virji, that somebody will pick up on this and it'll surface.
So yeah.
So Kulwant Kaur Panji.
Hanji Virji, Vai Khalsa, Vai Fateh Ji. I think I have the same question as this Virji proposes. I also have a gap in my understanding of hukam versus karam. I know, my understanding of hukam, I understand hukam as a divine system, that everything, like you said, nothing is immune to hukam. Everything is in his hukam. If everything is in his hukam, then what's the significance of my karam? Like, in Gurbani, karams are equally important, because at many places Guru Sahib said, those karma apniya, or whatever you sow, so shall you reap. So if everything is in his hukam, what is the significance of my karam? If my karams are, whatever I'm doing is within his hukam, or, when even I saw so many bad things happening in this world, like 2-year girl is raped, or, bad relationships, violence, wars, and all these things going on in this world. So everything is in his hukam, or we are not responsible for our actions. Also, question also arises, like, as Virji said, we are all the same. A person, how can be same when, a person who abused a 2-year-old girl or a 5-year-old girl, choked her, neck. So how can be same? I don't understand that. That's what my question is. I try to understand, there's a gap. Hard to fill. It is hard to fill for me. If someone can, yes.
I will let Gurjeet Singh Virji go first, and then share some of my thoughts around these questions so that we complete a full round. Gurjeet Singh Virji.
We'll just start from the beginning. It'll be good, quick revision, because it follows a theme. So we started with Mool Mantra, which was just emphasizing on one, which has been clarified in the last part in Hukam Razai Chalana. Razai means there is a generator of the Hukam. The Hukam is not going on its own. There is someone generating the Hukam. Who is generating the Hukam was given that one who is a Juni. He's not amongst us. We are all in Juni. And then the second, when he started with Had, Such, That is what the hukam is. The generator is on the top. Ad Sach Jugad Sach is what the hukam is, because hukam is not an Ad Sach. Jyot is an Ad Sach, but hukam is Ad Sach. So the hukam starts from Ad and then becomes Jugad and all. Less than they said, socha sochna howe, that any of those worldly faiths who has developed this theory couldn't control the mind. Chupa chup na howe. Because there was no jap there. It's the jap which will do all the action of keeping the mind quiet. So until the mind is quiet, you can't hear the hukam because there's too much of noise in your mind about the demands. The hukam is very, you can say very, very faint voice, which you can't hear. And we are mayata ariyatanna bola. We are visibly, we can't see him, and with the ears, we can't hear him. So these are the restrictions on the jeev. That's why chupa chup na howe, the mind, this is all about mind. The mind, your outer body has got a limit. He can eat, whatever you say, 5 rotiyan, 6 rotiyan. But the pukh is still there because he says, oh, it will be good. Can you give me a bag? I will do it for dinner. This is pukh. That's the pukh of mind, not of the body. The physical body only had a need which was fulfilled at that time. But this all pukh is coming from mind because he is not knowledgeable enough that there is someone who will feed you even at the next. So this is chup. It's all about the mind. And be further pukhya pukhna utri, because that's all about jeev. The jeev is pukha, not the physical body. The physical body is away. So he's trying to take us everything onto the spiritual way. Sasyanpa also associated with our spirituality. Then Kivsachara Hoye is also. There's some part of the jeev which is not at the stage of the inner being. There is a bit of a difference between their mental or spiritual values. That's what we need to break those barriers. Hukam Razai Chalna, then he says, if by chance the jeev understand the hukams Rajai, is that what the theme of Gurmat is? Hukam is going on, but if you go back, there's a sunlight there, but who is the generator? It is the sun. If you move backwards, you will find that there is a Razai. And Razai is Puran Brahma, who is a Juni. Nanak Likhya Nal is, we have a hukam. Hukam ki manpam, there is our hukam. We need to leave that. Until you leave that, you could never understand what the real hukam is, because this hukam is a hindrance. It creates all the hindrance. It's a multiple chains, layers, which comes as doubts. It's all done by jeev. If jeev know how to shut it itself up, then he can hear the hukam. And then he says, if someone has heard the hukam, what he will say, hukmi hovan akar. See, the world came first, the jeev came later. The jag was born first. The 4 elements came first. Then the jeev came. So hukmi hovan akar, the physical akars, hukmi na kaha jai, you cannot explain it, because the hukam is dynamic. By the time you will explain it, there's millions of hukams have happened. Which one you will try to, it's one of the chemistry formula which I know is the law of uncertainty, that you cannot measure either the velocity or the position of electron accurately because it changes. So same is the hukam. Hukam is very dynamic, and it is also telling us that it didn't happen and finished. It's still going on, and how many hukams have happened between you and my conversation, who knows? Hukmi hovan G, and then the G comes. The akar comes first, the 4 elements come first, jag comes first, then G is jagat. There's a difference between the two, which is not being at any place segregated by the tikakars. Jagat is our jyot. The G entered the 4 elements and becomes jagat. Hukma mila vadiyai. The jag doesn't need vadiyai. My chair, my computer is just as what stage they are, they're physical. But there is someone who will get vadiyai. That is the jeev, the one who has been put into this body. Hukmi uttam neech. If he understand, if the jeev can slowly get into the stage or can tame his mind and try to understand, then he becomes uttam. Otherwise, he stays. There's so many madhu, Govindam aise aparadhi, Jinn Pind, there's something like that. Tinki Pao Bhakti Ni Sadhi. So this is Nichta, but and they say, you know, Sabte Uncha Sadgur, Sabte Vadda Sadgur. This is how we have to associate that who is Uttam? The one who has realized the one within him. His mool is Uttam. The one who is not is Manmukh. Hukmi Lakh Dukh Sukh Paiye. The Hukum, all our Dukh Sukhs are coming through Hukum. So if we are coming through Hukum, we need not bother that much. That's first stage. If the Jeev understand that everything comes through there. Ikna Hukmi Bakshish. Some who understand get the Bakshish. Ik Hukmi Sarapavaiye. But the others who are still in the process of understanding, are still in reincarnations. Hukum hai andar sabko. It is physical and non-physical.
Kaviji, you have a minute.
Yeah.
You
Hukum hai
have a
andar
minute left.
sabko. Hanji, hanji. Hukum hai andar sabko. Physical and non-physical. Every entity is in the hukum. Bahar hukum na koi. Nanak hukum hai je bujhe. If Jeev can understand, the physical world has not to understand hukum. The Jeev has to. The home mein kahna koi. Because the Jeev came in the home. Home which aya. If Jeev understand the hukum, then he can finish his home. So that was my understanding. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa.
Hanji, thank you. Thank you, Viji. So some very interesting questions that people have, me included, of course. So before I start the second round, just let me share. Gurjeet Singh Viji has, clarified some of this idea of Uttam Neech. This is one way I see it myself, but I also see it in terms of how the universe is characterized, because it is hierarchical in nature. So things, their position within the universe, I see it in that sense as well. But I also see it in the sense that Gurjeet Singh Viji has explained. And I think the idea of karam versus hukum, which Kulwant Kaur Panji raised, is again the perspective with which you are doing your karam, your actions, will actually in the end determine the quality of your existence. Just as Ekunkarji said earlier on, that if I'm looking at the impeachment trial, through the lens of my home, then I have a lot to say. If I don't, if I treat this as happening in hukum, well, then I may not have that much to say. I'll just accept it. I may not like it. That's different though. But again, to the point of good and bad, I think that these are categories that we have created. I often use the example of, if you're on ground level, you can only see so far. But if you actually get on a plane and sort of, at a higher altitude, you see a lot more, and your perspective is suddenly broadened. So in the same way, Haume has a very restricted perspective, and it tends to see things in terms of pap, pun, good, bad. And I think I remember Bani somewhere says, Simrit Sastra Pun Pap Bichar De Tatya Sar Na Jani. I think the point being that, a lot of these Smritis, Hindu scriptures talk about pap and pun, good and bad. They've actually missed the essence. So I think when Guru Nanak talks about hukum and living in hukum, he's not really talking about pap, pun, good, bad. Now violence, of course, it is very difficult to accept that it is in hukum, but the fact is that it is. So we have to somewhere change our perspective. So that said, let me do the second round. Ekunkarji.
Yes. The whole concept of suffering, I think, is so important because there's, I can't remember which verse it's in, but the lines "Ape bi jape hikal, nanak hukmi," we come and go and hukam, but what we plant, we have to eat. And so when it comes to kadam, I think it's that ape bija pehi kal, that it isn't that hukam and kadam are opposite of each other. It's that the concept of kadam is included within the divine order. So that there is a divine play going on, and I'm in that play, and I'm an actor in that play, and what I do has consequence, which is why we have a guru and why we're asked to meditate in the Amrit Vela and chant the Nam and do the Kirtan and cultivate the virtues, because those are the seeds that are going to help us reap a life where the mind becomes clear and we can live in Sahaj. I think the problem of suffering, when we look at the suffering in the world, I never take it that this line in Japji is asking me to be passive. That it's like I can say, okay, there is suffering, and yet I can take action to help create a world where suffering is less. And I think that was what Guru Nanak walked for however many decades. He walked not just to teach people, but to make the suffering less and the happiness more. And time and again through history, the Sikhs were called into different kinds of seva, service, that was about increasing the happiness and decreasing the suffering. So again, it's that equanimity of saying there are things within hukam, and yet there is action I can take, and I need to I need to know that I'm not powerless, but at the same time I have to respect that there's a bigger journey going on for every soul, that it's not for me to know what that God's plan is for that particular soul. Okay, that's all I think I have to say.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I couldn't agree with you more, because I think suffering is part of the experience of being embodied. And again, I want to just say again that, karam, it depends on which pivot you're doing your karams from. Is it in the service of your own ego, or is it in the service of Ekonkar? Because I do believe that that's the realization that must dawn upon us, is that we are really meant to be in the service of the entire creation. And that is really how we ought to approach our lives. So there is a difference there. Kulwant Kaur Bhenji, I hope that it has given you some food for thought.
Yes, Hanji Viji. I think it's, yes, the gap is a little bit in girls. I try to understand the way I think Ekam Kaji explained that even if something is going on, I will not sit passively. I will take action. But, as you said, thinking that, okay, I have to be in the service of the creation. Yes, I think then, I think then the significance of karam and to be in hukam are like hand in hand. I am taking my actions, I'm doing, but I'm doing in the hukam. It's not, under the influence of my ego, but it's in the service of the creator, in the creation, to make, to help.
Yeah, make us a better place.
Better place, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
ठीक है. हाँ जी, जसबीर सिंह वीर जी. Are you there?
I was on mute. Hello.
Anji.
I see hukam at a much higher level than this everyday nitty-gritty of life. Hukam is the broad order of things. And within that order, we do have certain free will. Although it is said here that hukmi likh, that likhya, because from hukum likh dukh sukh paiye, but if dukh sukh ki hai, perhaps because if you read Gurbani elsewhere, dukh sukh is also the cycle of birth and death is also considered like a sukh and dukh, from that level of sukh and dukh. And therefore, if we act within the order, understanding the whole order, then we have the position to eradicate this dukh. But at the same time, the concept that I lost my thought. Allow me to think for me. So this worldly interactions of our existence, they have a bearing upon our consequences, because every action has a consequence, and we do reap the consequence of our actions. But in the broader things of life, Guru Sahib has written that whole overall order of things has to be within the hukum, in the sense that I do not control the natural process. But it is beyond my control. Yet I have individual identity to function within that order. Therefore, home marna matlab yahi hai, this is the meaning of killing the home, is that you are not controlling the universe. You are being controlled by the universe. You are working within the order of the things. But your individual actions on a daily basis is within the realm of your free will. That's how I think. Although it's said in many different places that Tor likhya paya, Mastak likhya paya, those things are sometimes not readily understandable. So here also it says hukmi likhya hai jo hukum de naal tai dukh sukh hega. Likhe da bhav hai ki this is a part of the existence, that if you do not act in the order of the hukum, then you can also go into the realm of dukkha. It is not that somebody has written it already for you. I don't read it that way.
Haji. Haji, thank you.
I see it that way.
Haji, thank you for the input. As you were talking, it just occurred to me that one way to look at hukum and our interaction with it could be like hukum being the operating system and we individuals being applications that have to actually work under the operating system. You know, you cannot exist outside the operating system, but you cannot know the operating system fully. You can only know some of its functionality. So that thought just crossed my mind. I thought I would share it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Good simile, yeah.
Hanji. Gurjeet Singh Virji, second round.
Hanji. I think, Japji Singh Virji has got the point, because it's in continuation, which we were saying, hukam razai chalna, nanak likhya naal. We write a hukum of our own because of the way we are trained that, you know, we have to do this, we have to do this. That is what it is saying. Hukum likh dukh sukh. That is my own hukum, which I'm trying to write inside. But because it is, maybe it is in synchronization with the other one, but maybe it is not. So once it is not, then I become dukhi. So it's not that the dukh is due to Parmeshwar's hukam, because Parmeshwar is someone who kade na bole koda, and you know, he will never do anything, commit any faults. He's faultless person. This problem, if dukh sukh is coming, is because of my misalignment with the hukam. So if I try to understand the hukam more deeply, because if I can do something, then I'm bigger than Parmeshwar, which is not possible. A jeev cannot be. I think you and me once discussed that in this cage about 80% of muscles are involuntary, and Ravindra Vijay, you said it could be even that 99% is involuntary. There's hardly 1% which is left to us. It is such a situation that everything has been done, and to likhya is something which we have actually accepted in the past and we remember it now. Tur means something we have written in the deep, but we just came in this Maya, forgot all that, you know, within these course of Mayas, and somehow it came into a Simriti, and then we start a fresh journey from there. So Hukum Likh Dukh Sukh Paiye will be should be translated as, it's because of my misunderstanding of the hukum. I think I can do something in this hukum, but everything is done within the hukum. I must be acceptable, or I should accept that. That's my understanding. And param is the other thing which we say in, it has said, kirt karam ke bichde. Kirt is soch. Because we are doing with spirituality, action done with the hand where does it originates from? It is originating from my soch. So in Gurbani, the karam is nothing but your soch. So we need to align that soch with the massive or the supreme or the Prameshwar soch. So Kirta Karam is the soch karam which is keeping me away. We didn't do any other physical karam when we sent to this Pav Sagar. It was something done within our soch. So Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji.
Thank you, Vijay. I think we've had quite an interesting revisitation of the concept of hukum and haume. Does anybody have any final thoughts that they want to share? Ekunkarji, do you have anything further to add?
But I think the way that we get to the understanding of hukum that's on an emotional level, that's where I think the key, why, you know, the Guru will say later on, Amrit Vela, Sachana Variyayi Vichar, that we can think about hukum and we can talk about it, but to live a sense of emotional peace in the midst of challenging experiences is where I think the Shabad is not just a philosophy, but a practice. Because there's things inside of us that they're hard to change through the frontal lobe. You gotta get into the limbic system to turn those switches. So those are my final thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Just another thought that I wanted to share. You know, I often think of, well, reality, you know, exists at many levels and dimensions that we cannot even begin to fathom. So we are operating in a very kind of narrow grid, if you will. And so for us to grasp hukum in its entirety is obviously beyond our ability. However, to Gurjeet Singh's point, we are writing our own hukum as well, lekha, because in some very important sense, we are co-creators, we are kartas on a small scale. And so therefore, we have to be attuned to the world around us. And how do you get that attunement? You train yourself. I mean, Japji Sahib, in subsequent Pauris, we will learn the art of training yourself, your awareness, deepening your awareness through attention. So the thing is that there are many things that are happening beyond the level of your thought. And it is, as to Ekunkarji's point, it is that which you have to also activate, you know, your deep intuitive level that is, that you're not very familiar with. And I often think of that level as being like the current in the water. You never know how and when it is going to change its course. However, a good salesperson can sense it, feel it, anticipate it, and shift course accordingly. You know, can shift the sail just to keep the boat going in a straight line. Likewise, there are many things that are happening around us, not at the level of our thought, but they impact us. So when we expand our awareness and consciousness through training, then we can begin to anticipate things. You know, we call them synchronicities, for example, or sometimes we have a gut feel about something. So some of these capacities within us have to be developed. And I think that will shed light on a lot of these questions about karam and dukh and sukh and why is all the violence around us, etc. I thought I'd just share that with you. Anji Kulwant Kaur Panji, any final thoughts?
I don't have anything to say.
Hanji Jasbir Singh Virji, final thoughts?
Thank you.
Chaji, Gurjeet Singh Vir ji. Do you have anything to say, Jasbir Singh Vir ji?
Yes, I'm about to say that.
Anji, sorry,
I'm about to say
I thought you were just thanking us and moving on.
No. Thank you that gave me the opportunity to speak. Yeah. Okay. Once again, the word lik, I was thinking once again of what I said. The point that hukmi lik dukh sukh paye, that also means that it is within the hukum that there's an existence of dukh and sukh. It is not that my dukh and sukh is written by somebody and I have to follow that. That it is also within the order of the whole natural creation that there is existence of dukh and sukha based on our actions or reactions. So you say it's the starting Pauri, 17th Pauri we go, says that there are so many noble people, there are so many killers, there are so many all those things. That the existence of these duality, this dual character, the dual nature of a human being is in existence. It does exist, but we have to work within the order to make it better. The other thing, last thought I wanted is a clarification because I missed that. It is when you said soche soch na hove. What do you think of this soche soch na hove? What was the thought here?
My thought? Are you asking me or are you asking the
anyone? Ask yourself, yeah.
Well, I can start the response and then I'll ask the others. I mean, to me personally, it has evolved from soch as in reasoning to sochta as in ritual bathing, and then it has evolved back again to reasoning, and then the pendulum swings the other way. So what I'm telling you is that I haven't quite made up my mind about it.
I see. No, my thought is I have discussed with people also. It's a part of the Ashtanga Yoga, that Shochale or Shocham. Also, there are 4 pillars in the Hindu thinking. Satyam, Shocham, Daya, or Dhanam. So it is the cleanliness of the body, bathing and all that stuff. It's considered as part of the so-called Hindu ritual. I don't want to use the word Hindu, but it's part of the ritual.
It is
part of the ritual. All these things don't matter at all. But this Pauri comment is on these basic rituals of fasting, of keeping Maun Vrata. You know, Maun Vrat means keeping silent. And then Shauchale means bathing. None of these rituals ever matter anything at all. That's the whole meaning of it.
So, Gurjeet Singh Vir ji, do you have any final, do you want to say anything?
Hanji Vir ji, I am unmuted. Hanji Vir ji, Hanji.
Any final thoughts? We are just wrapping up.
I've written actually an article, the Socha word. We're still not getting into its depth because it started from Bhagat Bani. We missed 16 pagas and we started straight away from Guru Nanak. You can't crack the riddle like that. Kabir ji has said, so, kya socha hai barang bara? Who is thinking? The mind thinks. And he's telling him, Hari ka naam na jab sagavara. He says, you foolish, you must be japping whose name? It's your Hari, he's your mood, the one closer to you. I'll tell you, there's a story like we tell in Punjabi, that kasun nede ka Rabb nede. The one Bhagat will always say Rabb nede, but for us, we'll change. We'll say, no, kasun jara nede hai. And that's what Sochana is all about. We have been told that God is more closer to us. But when some pressure comes on us, we start to think rather than doing this exercise of Japna. So Japna is what related to Socha Sochana, with that due to whatever you think, you can't do it because Sumar Sastra Punpa Bichar, they were never able to do it. How will you do it? They had everything available to them. And secondly, the word Homme is showing us the duality of the Jeev, that the Jeev who has come here, his Atma has to get into the Paratma. It's not Atma getting directly into Paramatma. It's the Atma has to go into, because he came in Hom, and then he generated Homme. That's why he said Homme. If someone understands Homme means I have 2 parts to my Jeev. Let my outer consciousness know about this, then the whole process will start. So this is my understanding about Homme. That's duality is being indicated in the word home.
Haji, and that duality, as Jasbir Singh Viji said earlier, it is just part of the order, because everything is dual in this world. I mean, there is good, bad, high, low, and that is how we understand it.
But if
So
you
with that,
understand the hukam, you're right, then the duality goes.
yes, but it's a realization. It is an
Yes,
awakening.
realization.
It's a
Yeah.
realization.
That's enlightenment of
Yeah.
who.
Yes.
It's only one part. The little part of a jeev who has to get into the other jeev is satyara.
Yeah.
The whole jeev is not chutyara. It's
Yeah.
a very little part of the jeev which is not knowing the fact. He can realize it's all at the
Hanji.
same stage.
Thank you, Ji.
Okay.
Anji, that said, thank you very much, all of you. Interesting, great conversation. We shall convene again in a week. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Also,
Vaheguru Ji.
Right, good.
Vai Khalsa, Vai Fateh Ji.